Bienvenidos a un capítulo más de Diálogos Sensoriales, en esta ocasión en la modalidad itinerante. Y les platico que tengo el gran placer de platicar con una gran amiga, una gran querida amiga. Ella es licenciada en Ciencias de la Nutrición, graduada con honores de la Universidad de Cornell. Tiene un máster en Food Science que está totalmente orientado en Ciencias Sensoriales por la Universidad de Davis, en California. Y pues tuvo un trabajo con el doctor Mike Manny, que seguramente lo conocen. Ella es una profesional consumada y reconocida ampliamente en investigación de consumidor y sensorial, experta en aprovechar esta información para impulsar la innovación de productos y el crecimiento empresarial. También tiene una amplia experiencia en investigación que incluye métodos cualitativos y cuantitativos para entregar resultados al negocio, trabajando en auditorías de funciones sensoriales, moderación de focus group, especificaciones sensoriales, estrategia de innovación, entrenamiento funcional, definición de productos front-end, vida útil, metodología KANO, tiene varias publicaciones dentro de la ASTM, el Journal of Sensory Studies, es instructor en el IFT, conferencista en Pangborn, fanática de las películas, de los viajes, que bueno, ya nos contará cómo ha cambiado la pandemia en esto, en fin. Lori Rothman, bienvenida. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en esta plática de diálogos sensoriales.
Hola, Dan. Bueno, yo voy a hablar en inglés, pero me gustaría empezar por decirte que me siento honrado de que me hayas pedido que haga este podcast contigo. Nos conocemos desde hace varios años, nos hemos cenado en DF cuando yo estaba de visita y nos hemos visto en varias conferencias.
Exacto.
Voy a cambiar a inglés.
Gracias. Te agradezco muchísimo tu tiempo. Sí, hemos compartido muy buenos momentos. Tacos también allá en Estados Unidos. Le pedí a Lori también que hablara en inglés porque es su idioma natal, pero ella es muy fluente también en español. Bueno, pero
mentiroso.
Muy bien. Lori, ¿cómo empiezas en sensorial? Vaya, ya vimos un poquito de tu historia por las escuelas, pero ¿cómo llegas a sensorial?
Right. Like most folks, it was an accident. It was a happy accident. I decided that I wanted to go back to school. My bachelor's is in nutrition. I decided to go back to school in food science at UC Davis. And one of the first professors I met when I got up there was Dr. Omani. And he offered me a position in his lab. And so I took it. And I just started in sensory without really knowing very much about it. And I really fell in love with it. It's got a lot going for it because it's the basics of science. It's very scientific, but yet there's also an art. There's rules about how you do things with business issues, but yet there's often more than one way to answer a question. And so I find you can be very creative within the discipline. So I've just loved it. I've been doing it for more than 30 years and it's great.
Wow. Un gran camino, sin duda. ¿Tienes algún momento donde dijeras, no, sensorial no es lo mío? O en un momento donde dijeras, aquí sensorial no me despego, sigo aquí trabajando en sensorial. ¿Tienes esas memorias?
Well, so it's kind of a funny story. When I got out of graduate school, it was in the 80s, and there actually was it was a bit of a repression, right? There was not a great economy in the United States. And I was looking for potentially a product development job, but the job that I got offered was actually in sensory. And so I went to work for sensory in Philip Morris, and I was working with beverages, wow. 7-Up and colas. I wasn't working in cigarettes, but I began to realize that I could make a difference by partnering with product developers and helping them target specific sensory profiles for their products that were liked. And once I saw the power of the discipline, that absolutely got me hooked. And then I was full on board.
Wow. Y de ahí no has tenido la intención de cambiar a otra área de trabajo.
Nunca, nunca, nunca. Porque siempre hay más aprender en sensorial, right? There's always more to learn.
Claro.
What's wonderful about it is that it's a developing science. And so the sensory now is not the sensory from 20 or even 10 years ago, right? We've started to have, we've got AI, right? We've got artificial intelligence, we've got simulated environments. We're now understanding more about the emotional impacts of our products.
Mm-hmm.
And so the discipline has changed and keeps changing. And so that's what makes it interesting. The methods that you might have used 10 years ago, yes, you keep some, but you progress and you incorporate new methods into what you do every day. That's fascinating.
Totalmente de acuerdo. Y en ¿en qué momento sientes que cambió sensorial tu vida? O sea, empezaste a trabajar, entraste con Mike. ¿Cómo fue trabajar con Mike, por ejemplo?
Well, it was very interesting working with Mike, because Mike is really, really smart. And so you have to work hard to keep up. So he's got a tremendous intellect, and he can break it down to your way of thinking. But it's sometimes hard to keep up with Mike because he's so smart. You know, unfortunately, and you'll understand this, right? Us in the sensory world, we go out to dinner, we go cenar, and what happens is we're always in there, you know, sort of breaking down the food, and we'll even say to each other, wow, this is really bad. Come try this, you know, because it's bad, right? And it's bad in a certain way, and it's illustrative, and we sort of talk about it, and it's fun. So in my own personal life, I have to sort of turn that off, right?
Right.
If I'm out with dinner with my husband, I'm not gonna start, you know, all of that stuff. But what's great is, you know, so I tend to be a little picky eater, right? I don't know if it's because of my profession, but I'm a little picky. My husband eats anything, and so that's great. I can always just give him whatever I don't like, whatever's not delivering sensory wise. But it's great. And what's interesting, so I have two sons, and one of my younger sons has a really good palate, particularly with aromas. He's always smelling things. He doesn't like cheese. And every once in a while, if he comes over, or when he was a child, I would try and sneak cheese into his food, you know, because of dairy protein, and he could always pick it up. He'd go, Mom, there's cheese in this. I'm not eating it.
Claro.
So that's how sensory's impacted my life, personally.
Sí, caray, es algo normal porque pues empiezas a ser consciente de todo.
Sí.
Tú mencionas esta historia, estos años que has trabajado. ¿Qué es lo que crees que haya cambiado más en sensorial desde hace 15 años, 20 a la fecha? ¿Qué es más diferente?
El respeto, right? Respect that the discipline has.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first started, it was kind of an afterthought. And then people would make samples and they give them to you to test them, right? But now, generally in the bigger companies, at least in the more sophisticated companies, they understand that sensory has to be incorporated from the beginning. Sometimes even in concept development when you're writing a concept and you want to describe, let's say in the food world, you want to describe what this product is. You know, you might have sensory helping you either with expert language or with touch points from consumers to actually write a concept, right? And all through the areas of idea generation, also all the work on segmentation, the various consumer segments based on what sensory properties they like. So I would say the biggest change is that sensory has more respect, and sensory is incorporated up front, a critical team member. And at the most sophisticated stage, you know, there's different stages of sensory in different companies, right? At the most sophisticated stage, sensory is not just answering the questions, but they're helping to formulate the questions. What are the things that we need to know about this potential new product? And helping to drive the whole research plan and the research direction, rather than just saying, here's some products, test them.
Claro. ¿Sabes qué me ha gustado mucho del sensorial en estos años? Que se ha fusionado con mercadotecnia, ¿no? Ya no es sensorial solo y marketing en el otro. O sea, se ha integrado muy padre y ya ha sido un gran beneficio para la industria, ¿no? Me imagino que cuando estabas en ese proceso de la mezcla, fue una gran satisfacción para ti.
Well, you know, there is, in many companies, there is a tension between sensory and marketing research folks, because often market research does product testing as well as sensory. But what I have found, and it's been a long struggle and a long road, is that when you partner together, right, in the end, what's brought to the market is much better. I tend to think of marketing and market research, they are the consumer experts. So they know all about the consumers. Mm-hmm. And technical sensory owns the product. And so you have to marry the product and the consumer, right? And so what's the best thing is to try and build bridges. So about 10 years ago, my market research counterpart, when I was with Kraft, we did a presentation for IFT together on how sensory and marketing research can partner together to drive successful innovation and product development. So it takes a first step. You have to try and break through your functional silos. And you also have to practice not just saying no, but practice saying yes and, right? So for example, if a product developer or a marketing person would come to me and say, you know, I want to ask if this flavor is artificial or natural. And I just roll my eyes and I think that just means you like it, right? But is it really in the end going to hurt the technical integrity of the study if I add this extra question and make them happy and make what we call a deposit in the relationship bank, right? Because relationships are so important. You know this as well as anyone, cross-functional relationships. And so I started doing things, as long as it didn't compromise the integrity of a study, you can give a little. You can give a little. And it goes a long way, because then people trust you as a partner trying to work together, as opposed to shutting the doors and windows of your own functional silo and say, no, that's mine. Nope, don't touch it.
Eso es algo que en muchas compañías sucede actualmente, pero que lo veo, por ejemplo, en Estados Unidos, donde en un congreso como el SSP, el Sensory Society, tú ves en una misma mesa a compañías competidoras platicando y compartiendo sus experiencias.
Sí.
¿Cómo llegan a eso? ¿Cómo puedes hacer eso?
You're not going to like this, Iván, but I think that it's because a lot of the field is mujeres.
Okay.
I think that, and mujeres are naturally collaborative. You know, I don't mean to get into that, but women tend to be more collaborative. Not always true, but so I think that's part of the driver. But I also think it's because no matter what company we're in, we share experiences. And I used to, when I was at Kraft, I had sensory folks in competing companies, and we used to talk to each other about our problems. We weren't giving confidential information away, and we probably were not supposed to be speaking, but it really helped us understand, A, I hear you, I've been through something similar, and B, here's what worked for me, here's what helped me. Perhaps this will help you, right? And so it's great, and that's one of the things that I love about the field. The other thing is that it's pretty small, right? And so if I'm at SSP, if I'm at Pangborn, I know I'm going to see Bon, right? I know I'm going to run into Esther, right? So, and that's what's been really great is seeing folks over the years. Some folks I don't really even know personally. I just know them through conferences or whatever. And it's so nice. In some ways, it's like coming home, and I feel like it's like my tribe, you know, because we're kind of nerds, you know. And it's like my tribe, and I feel very comfortable at all these sensory events. And after a few years, you start to get to know everybody, and it's really fun.
Totalmente, totalmente. Y estoy de acuerdo contigo en que es un campo de mujeres, donde la mayoría son mujeres
Sí.
y tiene sentido. Entonces, hay esperanzas para que eventualmente la comunidad sensorial comparta toda esa información. Qué buena nota. Has hecho una buena observación y pues sí. Extraño eso de los eventos, ¿no? Vernos y platicar y estar ahí con Darla, con todo el mundo ahí en Doña también es, caray, pronto, esperemos que ya pronto volvamos a estos eventos.
Ah,
¿no?
espero que sí.
Sí, caray.
De su boca, de los ojos del Señor.
Profeta.
Sí, sí. From your mouth to God's ears, yeah.
Por favor.
Yeah, and it's also true. I'm active in a society called, ASTM, right? ASTM International, and we write standards, technical standards. And it's the most nerdy group of people that you ever meet. It's so nerdy.
Total.
We just write these standards and they're very boring. But when we go out to dinner, we have so much fun, right?
Claro.
We have so much fun talking about all the food and everything. It's just great. I miss it. I haven't had, I'll tell you honestly, Yvonne, since pandemic started, I haven't done ASTM remotely. I just can't bear it. I'm just hoping in the fall. The other things I've done, IFT, SSP, Pangborn, but I hope for ASTM in the fall.
Ay, ojalá. Sí, caray. Sí. ¿Cuál ha sido tu mayor reto en sensorial en este tiempo que has trabajado?
¿Mayor qué? La palabra?
Reto, tough, lo que sea más complicado, challenging.
Bueno, gracias. Okay. Well, I am training a remote panel. I'm training a panel remotely.
Wow.
That's difficult. Okay. Yeah. That's difficult because a lot of interactions involve body language, right? And then someone's quiet, they're up in the top of the screen, they're quiet. Is it that they don't agree? Is it that they don't understand? So we've got to get references to these people. We've got to get solutions to these people made in the lab, all shipped to their houses, right? They have to go to the grocery store, buy some references, some they're being shipped. So that's difficult. And also the communication, when you're in a room, if I'm training you and you're in a panel, right? And you're 8 or 10 people, I see what you're doing. Yeah. I know if you're paying attention or not. If you're over Zoom, exactly. I know you got your phone, right? So right now, right? I don't know if you can tell, right? I'm looking at my phone. So that's not what you want. You want people paying attention. And so it's difficult. I understand everyone has competing priorities these days. There's the dog, right? There's the kids, there's your work, there's all sorts of things going on. So this is a little bit challenging. In the end, it'll come through, but that's challenging. The other thing that's been tough is this whole time when we really haven't had consumer input, or we've had to change how we get consumer input, right? So I've been involved in-home tests, but they're controlled in-home. They're supposed to be, we would want to do a CLT, but we can't. So we would do it in-home, but controlled. Okay, now a bell's ringing. Now turn on your stove and start cooking the pasta. Now we've sent you olive oil and salt. Now we've sent it, now put it on and mix it in. Now that sort of thing. It's been interesting. It's worked better than I would have thought. But on the other hand, if you're going for a controlled environment and there's times you shouldn't, and you're in someone's home, even though you're supposedly monitoring them, right? Maybe you have 5 people on the Zoom and you're monitoring them. You still don't know really if they're doing it the way that you intended. So that's been a little tough too.
Claro. Sí, pierdes mucho control y ahí es donde mucha gente dice, no, sensorial no está siendo correctamente aplicado porque no hay un control total. Hey, estamos evolucionando, ¿no? A esta nueva realidad, ¿no? En realidad. Muy bien. Lori, bueno, ya comentaste un poco cómo es trabajar con ASTM, pero en general, trabajar con otros colegas en el área sensorial, y cuando digo colegas me refiero a gente que también tiene publicaciones, también tiene, key speaker, wow, gente importante en sensorial. ¿Cómo es trabajar con ellos en general? ¿Es difícil? ¿Están abiertos a esta comunicación?
It's fantastic. So it's great. I mean, most people, if you come to people and you say, I need some help with something, people in this field are really open, very willing to tell you what they think. I mean, I have some relationships with professors at various universities. I have an issue I can I can talk to. Um, and people are, you know, people are terrific. So you've heard of Howard Moskowitz, right? So he, you know, one of his early books, I knew him. And, you know, we'd been friends. I'd always asked him questions, whatever. In one of his books, he made me president of one of the companies in his books. Lori Rothman is president of the Finer Ice Cream Company. And he didn't tell me. And one day I was reading his textbook and I come across my name in there as a president of an ice cream company. It's just a little aside just to tell you that people are accessible, they're funny, you know, and they're terrific in this field. So it's been great. If you want to talk to, you know, any of the, you want to know what Charles Spence thinks about something, you know, you can email him or reach out to the university and he'll answer you. Same with John Hayes, you know, any of these folks, they're just, they tend to be very accessible and that's lovely.
Claro, y eso es algo que en lo personal me tocó vivir cuando fui a mi primer IFT, por ejemplo, donde hay un grupo de voluntarios para recibir a los nuevos, ¿no? Entonces se hace una comunicación. Recuerdo mucho ahí con Gregory Stuckey, que fue mi mentor en ese momento. Y de ahí, pues, vaya, conocido a varios y tuve la paz de acercarme a todos, a cada uno en diferentes momentos, y efectivamente empezar este diálogo, ¿no? Es ese primer paso el que siempre nos cuesta trabajo, bueno, como estudiantes o como recién llegados ahí en el grupo de especialistas sensoriales, ¿no?
It's wonderful, and many organizations have that. If you go to ASTM and you're a first timer, you know, they meet with you separately. There's instead of having little cliques and groups going off to dinner, there's a big sign-up sheet, you know, and everyone goes together. So it's very nice. And IFT has done something similar. They have an SSP, you know, they have mentor programs where you can sit down at tables with students that want mentorship. You can volunteer, you can continue the relationship afterward if you like. And it's great because I think anyone coming into the field really needs a mentor, because for new people, even though we now have more of the respect than we did earlier, it still can be tough coming in, right? Because it's so cross-functional, right? You're dealing with so many different functions. It's nice to have a mentor to be able to rely on, ask questions, help you navigate some of the political stuff besides the technical stuff.
Claro. Wow, sí, caray, no, ahorita pasó por mi mente todos esos momentos muy, muy bonitos y eso nos hace falta, ¿no? Esa interacción con las personas, pero esperemos que esto cambie poco a poco. Lori, hay un momento en la entrevista donde le pregunto al entrevistado, en este caso a ti, una serie de pruebas comparativas, un pair comparison. No hay empates, that's not allowed, y entonces me tendrías que decir si prefieres una u otra, ¿ok?
Sí, okay.
¿Tacos o hamburguesas?
Tacos,
¿Coca-Cola o Pepsi?
Coca-Cola,
¿Café o té?
café,
¿Análisis descriptivo tradicional o métodos rápidos?
tradicional,
¿Prueba triangular o prueba tétrada?
tetrada,
Eh,
muy poderoso,
muy bien. ¿Comida con chile o sin chile?
sin chile,
¿Ciudad o playa?
ciudad.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias.
No, tequila o mezcal,
Ah, tequila. ¿Cuál?
tequila o mezcal.
Yo,
Necesitas pedirme.
¿cuál quieres? ¿Cuál te gusta más? Perdóname. ¿Tequila o mezcal?
Si todo mal, mezcal. Si todo bien, también.
Y esa es muy buena frase. Muy bien, gracias. Eso ya habla del mezcal totalmente. Oye,
Yo
sí,
visité las empresas en México
¿sí?
de
¿Fuiste
mezcal. Sí,
¿y cuál te gustó más? ¿O tuviste un tour en en
sí,
la experiencia?
sí. Muy interesante. El agave y lo todo.
¿Qué te gustó más de ese proceso? Además de tomarlo.
Nada más de tomarlo.
Sí, tenemos una variedad grandísima de mezcales,
Sí,
inclusive en Guerrero, en Oaxaca, en Durango,
sí.
hay diferentes lugares. Está creciendo actualmente el mezcal. Eh,
Los probé acerca de Oaxaca.
ok, muy buenos, muy buenos. Fíjate que entrevisté de las primeras series de diálogos a a Carmen Santillán. Ella trabaja en una compañía que hace sabores, pero estuvimos en una mezcalería y el Cha, que es quien nos presentó los mezcales, nos presentó diferentes alternativas de mezcal y la sal de gusano con la cual podíamos hacer maridaje. Es una experiencia fantástica. Ahora que se abran las fronteras de nuevo y ya sea que tú vengas o esté por allá o nos veamos en un punto medio, haremos una experiencia de mezcal y la grabamos, ¿no? Si estás de acuerdo, hacemos un diálogo sensoriales presenciales con Lori y varios mezcales, ¿no?
Y la comida de Oaxaca
Uf,
es maravillosa,
uf.
maravillosa, ¿no? La
El
comida, oh, el mole,
mole, buenísimo el mole. Sí,
sí.
caray. ¿Qué más probaste de ahí, de Oaxaca?
Lo toro.
Todo. Es que sí, es una cocina totalmente
Las
diferente.
marquetas y todo, las tiendas y mercados y lo
Todo.
toro, sí.
Wow, qué bello. Pues ojalá y puedas regresar también por estos rumbos.
Espero que sí.
Sí, caray. Y de estos viajes a México que has hecho,
Sí.
¿qué comida te gusta más?
Chocolate.
¿El chocolate?
El,
No.
um, oh, no. Perdón, eso es Perú. No, bueno,
Ah,
el chocolate.
el choclo decías, ¿no? Que es nosotros le
Sí,
llamamos
es de
elote.
Perú.
Ajá. Ok.
Lo siento,
No te preocupes.
pero el chocolate, el bebido, ¿no? La bebida chocolate.
Sí.
Sí, me gusta muchísimo.
Y
Y también, bueno, es diferente depende en qué parte. Por ejemplo, en Monterrey, yo visité Monterrey, algunos negocios, y tienen, ¿cómo se dice? Chicharrones.
chicharroncito.
Chicharroncito en la mesa.
Sí.
Se tiende a chicharrones en la mesa. Muy diferente, muy interesante y muy
Sí.
rico. Muy rico, pero diferente.
Esa cultura de la carne en el norte del país es
Sí,
muy arraigada.
Sí.
Y sí hay una variedad, porque ese mismo corte de carne que se puede preparar en el centro, aquí en la Ciudad de México, semejante, pero nada, no es totalmente diferente. Y mira,
Bueno, yo quisiera visitar a algunos restaurantes en DF mayores del mundo. La
tenemos,
próxima vez.
sí,
La
pues
próxima vez.
nos ponemos de acuerdo y vamos a probar esta comida de allá sin problema. Claro que
Sí.
sí, por supuesto. Será un gusto. Lori, ¿es fácil hacer sensorial en Estados Unidos?
Sí. Dime más.
En el sentido de el consumidor acepta hacer pruebas o hay muchos voluntarios para hacer panel, entienden la
No es
trascendencia.
difícil. En tiempos normales no es difícil. No hay problemas. Bueno, it can be a little expensive, right? Un poco caro, right?
Sí.
But you also have the universities, and I think they're sometimes an underutilized resource. So universities often can offer you trained panels, consumer panels for a lot less than the standard research agencies will charge. So when I work with smaller companies, I advise them to reach out and use, if they don't have a discrimination panel, for example, to use a local university, or even not a local university, but just any university that specializes in sensory, and there's many of them in the United States that have the infrastructure and the ability to conduct a lot of these tests.
Sí, wow. Sí, cuando estás en contacto con estudiantes, gente que quiere empezar a trabajar en sensorial, ¿tendrás alguna recomendación para ellos de, hey, tienes que leer este libro, o bueno, no, te sugiero leer este libro, este artículo? ¿Tienes algunas recomendaciones para ellos?
Aprender, that you have to just keep learning. If they're a student of sensory, they will have read, the textbooks. They will have seen the Lawless and Heyman. They will have seen the Seville. They will have seen all of those. I tell them a couple of things. I think it's really important to have a good foundation in statistics. I think that too many people come out and don't have enough stats, right? I would say even minor in statistics. It's just really important because even if you're not going to do the statistics, you need to know how they're done. You need to know how to read the output. And you need to be able to challenge back if you think it's not being done correctly, I just had a big dialogue with some folks on should you rotate? Do you have to rotate principal components? Under what circumstances should you do rotation? That's not particularly statistical, but you have to sort of get in under the hood. Or, what's your error term in an ANOVA, in a multi-factor ANOVA? What are you using for your error term, and how is that going to impact your outcome, whether you're more or less likely to find differences, right? So I say study as much statistics as you can. That's number one. Number two, always keep learning. Always keep learning, right? Number three, get all the basics. Because if you understand the basics, and what I mean by that is go back and read some of the original literature, understand how the discipline started, how it was founded, right? On what principles. So that, and the reason for doing that is that when someone comes to you with a new method, a new scale, for example, here's a scale. I want you to use this scale. Well, you should understand enough about scaling, the psychological impact, whether you're using words, lines, whatever. You should know enough that you can comment and have an opinion on these new methods, right? Not just accept what's new, look at it critically, maybe try it out, but understand what the strengths and weaknesses are. And you can't do that as a scientist unless you have the basics in the science.
Claro. Keep the basic, como dicen, ¿no? Vamos a estar ahí en...
Absolutely, have to really learn the basics before you can kind of branch out.
Este acceso a la información de YouTube, Google, todo, hace que en muchas ocasiones el estudiante no vaya a lo básico, se quede con el review, con el shortcut para hacer lo que sea. Eso está bien, pero hay que mantener el fundamento. Es necesario el fundamento, ¿cierto?
So I teach sensory in university. I teach a class to research chefs. So these are not sensory folks. These are chefs that are going to be in industry, and I teach them sensory. And we go to the basics, right? We go to, now they're not going to necessarily be being called on to really do sensory, but I want them to understand enough so that when someone comes in to their company and maybe tries to sell something or whatever, they're able to handle it. For students, if you've got a degree, master's, PhD, you will have read all that stuff. And the good programs, there are some good certificate programs now, they also will insist that you read and understand the basics. But it's not something that you can skip. You might skip it, but I think it's going to come back to bite you, later on. I think it's pretty important.
Totalmente de acuerdo. ¿Cómo visualizas el futuro de Sensorial? ¿Qué sería para ti un cambio importante en los siguientes años?
Sí, el futuro es muy interesante. I really don't know what the future is going to bring. I think it's interesting. I've read, with artificial reality, right? I've read some studies that show it makes a difference. I've read some studies that show it doesn't make a difference, right? I mean, really, I have. I've read both, and we've seen all of this. Is it something you should do? Is it something you shouldn't do? I don't know. There's more to come on that. But I do think that the reason also it's so important to know the basics and know statistics well is that we're going to be farther and farther on in new statistical methods, coding, dashboards, so that a lot of this stuff is going to be covered up, right? You're going to input data and you're going to get something out. You won't even have to program. You won't even have to do anything. It'll come out, right? But you're going to need to understand. So there's going to be a lot less. I mean, they taught me in school how to do ANOVA by hand, right? I think everybody should do it once. It's miserable. Do a regression by hand, right? Do it once, right? And keep those fundamental understandings so that when all of the mechanistics behind the dashboard is hidden from you, you can at least go back and ask the question again, just once. What are you doing? How are you doing it, right? So it has to be more intentional, I think, to understand where things are coming from in the future, because it's going to be more push a button, right?
Totalmente.
I also think surveys are going to be easier, right? There's a lot of work going into now with Alexa and surveys, right? These home gizmos. I don't have one, but I saw that. This seemed crazy to me. I saw, so this, I'm showing my age now, but I saw there's a shower, they're going to put it in shower in your house, and you can have an app on your phone that will precisely control the temperature of the water coming out of the shower. Now, I thought that was dumb, frankly. I mean, do I really, can't I just go like this? It's not enough, it's too hot. Do I need to plug in 68? But anyway, so the future is going to be more, even more automated. And so it's more important for us to understand, what's under the hood, right? I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to have more statistical techniques, and, we're going to have to rely more on some of the statisticians to help us understand, what that's doing. I think we're going to understand even more about the emotional aspects of our food. Sometimes we don't even consider what's what's happening. There's been an explosion in that. And some of it's contradictory, and it's still, I consider its infancy stage. I haven't seen a ton of great work in that area, but I know that it's coming. I know that it's coming.
Y eso afectará el trabajo de la gente sensorial, ¿no? O sea, acabas de mencionar varios skills de las personas. Entonces, en tu opinión, una persona que se dedique a sensorial, ¿cómo debe ser? ¿Qué debe de tener como áreas a trabajar? ¿Tú lo visualizas de alguna forma?
So are you asking about what skills they need to get into the discipline, or
Correcto.
are you asking something? Okay, okay. Well, certainly, I think that if you're going to be a sensory professional, you have to go to school and get the basics. I am not personally a big fan of learning by doing. So you have people sometimes, right, they put them in a company, they start serving samples, and then they progress and they do well, and then they do more and they can do more things, but they've never learned the basics. I think you have to learn the science behind the discipline. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I think it's really important. I also think you have to have an open mind and not just focus on, I mean, you said to me, do I like tetrad or triangle? Well, you know, tetrad is more powerful, but you have to have 4 samples. And sometimes sensory wise, you can't do 4 samples. Sometimes you can't even do 3.
Right.
So it really depends. And you have to be able to make those judgments. So it's really important to have the fundamentals. It's important to be curious and to keep reading the literature, keep wanting to improve what you do and how you do it, you know, better, right? So there should be a spirit of constant improvement. And I also think that because the discipline is so cross-functional, you really need to understand relationships, and emotional intelligence is, and I've said it before, it's really important to understand how to get along with people from different disciplines, to put yourself in their shoes and think what's important to them, not what's important to me, but what's important to them, and how can I design a scientifically robust study that addresses what's important to my cross-functional counterparts, right? I think that's really important, and often not stressed enough. But I think that, so in one of my gigs, I do audits. So I go into companies and I audit their sensory function. So I look at 3 areas. One is, how is the discipline managed? How many people are there? What's the budget? Are they working strategically? Are they working toward the most important? Are they putting their resources to the products and initiatives that are the most important to the organization? Or are they doing something because somebody asked them, right? How are they strategically deploy their resources? That's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is technical. Okay, self-explanatory. Do they have the tools they should? And bucket 3 is all about relationships. How can they increase their impact and efficacy through relationships? And in many cases, number 3 is the most important, because relationships are often broken for a number of reasons. This was so sad. I was talking to a product developer. I was interviewing them. It happened to be in Mexico. And I was interviewing them about the relationship with sensory. And this product developer said to me, I'm not making this up, it used to be that clients came to me, the developer, and said, make this. And they trusted me and I would make it. Now, sensory tells me what to do. And I'm in competition with sensory now. And I said, whoa, that is a broken relationship. How can we have to change it so that these folks realize that they're attached at the hip, that one's success is the other's success, and that it's not about you or me, it's about doing what's best for the consumer. So anyway, sorry to go off on that long diatribe, but that's what I think is really important.
Sí, no, está perfecto, porque muchas de las personas que trabajamos en sensorial empezamos por casualidad.
Uh-huh.
No,
sí, por casualidad, absolutamente.
y pienso en
Sin excepción, sin excepción.
pienso en las nuevas generaciones porque yo quería ser, por ejemplo, un científico, ¿no?
Ujú.
Y ahora, como esta información sensorial está cada vez más difundida, habrá alguien que diga, ah, sensorial, quiero estudiar sensorial. Y estos elementos pueden darle un poco de, ok, soy de mente abierta, me gusta trabajar en equipo y me encanta la estadística, por ejemplo, esperemos. Y esas cuestiones son importantes para el área, ¿no? Es ese trabajo en conjunto, ¿no? Eventualmente esperemos que así sea. Lori, ¿algo más que quieras comentarnos? Something else you want to share with us?
No, I would just say that to anyone listening, it's a fantastic field, interesting, growing. There's great people in it like Iban that you'll see every year, for the next 20 years. And if anyone has any questions or wants to contact me, of course, through LinkedIn, I'm easily available. But I just want to thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure chatting with you, Iban. I can't believe an hour has gone by. It's just been great. Thank you so much, and I am honored that you asked me to dialogue with you today.
Es un placer para mí compartir personas que disfrutan también la información sensorial, que les encanta compartir, y por eso estás en eres la primera de Estados Unidos a la cual invitamos, pero eventualmente vamos a ir por más personas, ¿no? Y esperemos tener por aquí a más amigos que tenemos por allá.
Y finalmente, si todo mal, mezcal, si todo bien, también.
Y si no hay remedio, litro y medio.
I like that.
Ajá. Esa es la frase completa.
Okay.
Lori, te agradezco muchísimo tu contacto de LinkedIn, si así lo permites, lo vamos a colocar.
Lori Rothman, Lori Rothman Consulting @gmail.
Sí, súper bien. Agradezco este tiempo. Es un placer platicar contigo como siempre. A ustedes, gracias por acompañarnos. Si les gustó el video, denle like. Si no, no digan nada, solamente cierren.
Sí, claro.
Y nos vemos en la siguiente emisión de Diálogos Sensoriales. Hasta luego.
Que te vaya bien.
Gracias igualmente.